Good afternoon and welcome to the Assembly of Osteopathic Graduate Medical Educators AOGME webinar series. We're pleased to have you join us for this AOGME webinar on interpersonal conflict featuring Dr. Sara Kim. My name is Austin Wetmore. I'm the program manager for GME initiatives at ACOM, and I will help facilitate this webinar. Before we get started, I'd like to review a few housekeeping notes. This webinar is being recorded. The recording will be posted on the AOGME webpage shortly. All webinar participants are in listen-only mode. If you experience technical issues during the webinar, please use the chat feature and we will assist you. If you have questions for the speaker during the webinar, please feel free to submit them through the Q&A feature at any time. If time permits at the end of the webinar, she will respond to your questions. I will now briefly introduce our presenter. Dr. Sara Kim, research professor of surgery, received her PhD in education in 1999 from the University of Washington in Seattle, Washington. She currently serves as Associate Dean for Educational Quality Improvement at the University of Washington School of Medicine. As the inaugural George Bilston Professor in the Art of Communication with Peers and Patients, Dr. Kim actively leads research programs in conflict management and collaborates with a wide range of clinical, administrative, and educational stakeholders. Since 2014, she and her team have developed training programs and taught conflict dialogue and speaking up skills to more than 10,000 healthcare professionals. Dr. Kim is also a certified leadership coach and a certified mediator at the King County Dispute Resolution Center in the state of Washington. Thank you again to Dr. Kim for being with us today and for preparing this presentation. With that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Kim.
Oh, thank you, Austin, for that warm welcome. And thank you again for this invitation. I'd like to thank the organization and particularly Dr. Juan Acosta, who personally reached out and invited me to join you today. I know it's a little bit late on the East Coast, and I appreciate you being here. I said to Austin, my confession is, I actually thrive in a more interactive setting, especially dealing with this topic, very personal topic around conflict. So my request to you is if you can put in Q&A or in the chat as many posting as you can to give me a sense as to how the content is landing with you, whether you have questions. I do have a list of questions that Austin helped compile from the community, which I will go over. But hopefully there may be more questions that that we would love to see in chat. So then I know there are breathing human beings out there. So again, this is the title of the talk is Unlocking Interpersonal Conflict, Pitfalls and Possibilities. I'm going to show you a picture in a bit. Let's use chat. I'm going to ask you to put chat in the chat what you see. So don't overthink. Immediately as you see the photo, what do you see? An old man. So there are living, breathing human beings out there. Thank you. A face, old man with leaves. Yes. 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 So everybody tends to see a face in the tree. Yes. I mean, yeah, his hairdo is quite unique. What else do you see? There's something there. If I were to tell you there are 3 people in this picture, would that help? Okay. Okay. Angie Masters says boy and girl kissing. That's why there are 3 people. There's an old man and a boy and a girl kissing. And I don't know how many, now that you know they're in the photo, whether you can actually see it, whether your eyes can be guided. For instance like this, my nephew was kind enough to highlight this kissing couple who are sneaking in this photo. Why do I use this as an opening? And if you have to go and have dinner, just remember this photo. This is conflict management, that we look at a phenomenon and we can behold more than one truth. So when I do this live, many people, as I did to 150 department chairs and associate deans across the US medical schools just last month, everybody shouts out old man. And then there's one person who sees the kissing couple. So the reason why I love this photo is because it does teach me humility, that my eyes and experiences and my attention are drawn to the prominent features in this photo, especially in the large room setting. As my neighbor starts saying old man, I'm actually going to be biased, and I just 100% agree with them. There is an old man at the expense of considering the alternative. So the reason why this is important is, as I mentioned, that when we experience an event, when we go through our daily lives, there may not be just one truth. So when somebody calls out something that sounds like boutiquey and exotic, like a boy and a girl kissing, our mindset is to be curious, instead of dismissing their opinion by saying, you know, in our system, we don't do boutiquey things. Just align with the mainstream approaches to patient care or problem solving. So I appreciate Sandy, Rebecca, Diane, and yes, that now you see Rika. So Angie, thanks a lot for calling that out. So that's what we will talk about for the rest of the session. I will spend a little bit of time around what conflict is and what the consequences are, and then go through at a brisk pace what I'm calling 5 pillars of conflict resolution. In chat, okay, somebody on anonymous chat, thanks for making me smile. What is conflict? When you hear the conflict, or when you're in the midst of conflict, how do you experience conflict? Let's get some chat input here. Olivia, discomfort. Mary Beth, intimidating. So, Elizabeth, you think of solutions. Bravo, that's great. Opportunity to solve. Runaway. Thanks, Janet, for being honest. Tension, hostility. Well, Rika, you too, that you're thinking in a positive, future-oriented. Wish it was over. I do too. Opposing ideas and views, people not respecting one another. These are all golden. The definition that I use, so let's start with the definition, is this, that conflict is the perception, and can we underline that term 1,000 times? It is not my absolute truth. It is not the sole belief. It is only a perception formed in the sliver of experience I have, in the slice of my observation that may be formed by my past experiences or formed by the unresolved conflict with the individual before me. So when there are differences in opinions or problem-solving approaches, or when we have discrepancies such as norms and values being applied to maybe the frontline staff differently than how the institutional norms may be applied to senior management, there's going to be a gap or discrepancies. When people say, I'm in conflict because of misalignment and expectations, I think of discrepancies. I love the phrase incompatible wish because it suggests that conflict involves our emotions. That's why some of our colleagues say, wish it was over. I wish I can run away. So, and then we get defensive. I get very reactive, as you'll see in a minute. So the incompatible wish, for me, it happens when promises are broken, when people don't keep up with their words, or when my voices are not invited, or when invited, what I express is not valued. There's no recognition of the merit of what I express. So in that space, I'm going to feel sometimes angry. Sometimes I find sadness from being embarrassed when these things happen in public. So Elizabeth, thank you for qualifying that yes, you are focusing on problem solving through looking for solutions, but it's true. And we will talk a little bit about power later. So thank you for foregrounding that. I want to start here with Rumi, the 13th century Persian poet. We all started off as pure gold. Isn't that just delightful to chew on? Well, that's my addition. Then he says, then people began polluting us when we were too young to fight back. So why do I bring this up? In conflict space, what we commonly experience is some kind of distortion. That distortion tarnishes the way I see myself in the space of conflict, that I see and experience the other person, and how I understand and how I hold the issues at the center of conflict. I am very privileged to listen to many conflict narratives. In fact, my journey into conflict management, the first academic endeavor was to collect conflict stories from patients, from residents, attendings, nurses across our clinical enterprises. And I continue to listen to conflict stories from accomplished physicians and scientists to our trainees, including residents and medical students. So I work on our medical school accreditation. So medical students are my key stakeholder group. And if I were to sit back and draw out a theme from everybody's conflict stories, distortion continues to come back. And when we are in that space of distortion, that's when I'm reminded of Rumi's poem, that wow, all of us who started out as pure gold, perhaps because of our family system, perhaps because of the cultural, societal, political, historical forces, there had been some elements of something being tarnished and in extreme cases distorted. So here are some examples where truly accomplished people in the space of conflict begins to feel that they may be incompetent. They feel they begin to do, they doubt in terms of how they're seen, how they're valued. Disappointment is a key form of distortion, because something that somebody mentioned, respect in chat, that of course I should be respected. But when somebody doesn't reach out to me first, and then there's side chat happening, I am disappointed. When the team isn't on the same page because of the conflict, there's something being disjointed. I had a conflict with my boss many years ago, and from then on, I'm unclear. To a point, I feel disoriented as to what's expected of me. In the space of conflict, many people feel disillusioned when my voices and opinions are not invited or heard. Then people have a sense of diminishment. I have met many individuals who left our system as a direct result of conflict with their superior. And they will tell me the exact point when they decided that it was time to get out. This is hard when people say there's no joy in what I do. I used to love coming to work, not anymore, as a result of this prickly and significant conflict I have with colleagues and with my superior. And when I hear those stories, man, it feels like the person's spirit is dying. So here are some examples of how I see conflict as a form of distortion especially if we don't spend time like you are doing here in cultivating our self-awareness and our knowledge about what conflict is, how it gives rises, and what are the opportunities for us to walk through the conflict without running away. I am just quickly reviewing the chat. Yes, well, information withholding is actually a major source of conflict. The stories we collected from our system, we developed the sources of conflict. It was a conceptual framework. And information sharing, information withholding under the communication theme is a major source of conflict. If that information withholding is deliberate, especially, then it is a form. And if you have read the Crucial Conversation book, and I highly recommend that book, anyone who wants to be better in conflict management, that Crucial Conversation book by what used to be Vital Smarts is a must. They will call out information withholding as a form of violence, because we're denying another person the legitimate information that person needs to be successful, to be effective, to feel included in the team. Another form of violence is gossip. So sometimes we consider gossiping as the necessary kind of a professional, if not a skill, but kind of it's our ritual to feel like, oh yeah, I'm with my people. I feel a sense of belonging. However, when the gossip is targeting an individual, it is a form of violence in the sense that we're not giving that individual an opportunity of a direct conversation. So when we want to avoid the conversation and we channel the need to talk about the conflict, but with like-minded colleagues, therefore, it is a form of gossip. But if that gossip then amounts to being a bully or bullying behavior, what is the definition of bullying? It's an unwanted, repetitive, harmful actions. And unfortunately, in our study, we did hear stories of bullying. In this case, it was a group of nurses who actually were just so unkind and nearly cruel to a brand new nurse. And the interviewee was a nurse manager who had no choice but to find another unit for that new nurse. She did try to problem solve, but the seasoned nurses, once they were on a united front, it was so hard to open the door for that new nurse to feel welcome, to feel that the nurse can be coached by the experienced nurses. So those are difficult stories to get. Yeah, and sometimes we may gossip. It is a form of protection. Everything that we do as a defense mechanism is a form of our system trying to protect ourselves. And so what conflict management helps us is there are other ways of developing repertoire of protection, but also inclusion. And to do both equally well by being authentic to what I have to share with the other person, but also giving that person an opportunity to articulate what's on their mind. And that leads me to highlighting what I think are gifts of conflict. So conflict is not an academic endeavor for me as a topic. The whole reason I do this work is because of a major conflict I had 17 years ago with a mentor. And I have never experienced anything before or since that event that has threatened my physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. It was a very extreme conflict case that happened along the power hierarchy, where I had no advocacy. By the time I tried to advocate for myself, it was too late. And this lasted the whole process of many levels of conflict management avenues, informal and formal. It lasted 18 months. And when I tumbled out of it, I wasn't sure what kind of career I was going to have. I wasn't sure what kind of a person I could imagine to be anew, because I was pretty destroyed by the severity of the conflict. It took nearly 5 years for me to return to that conflict. And this is what I learned, that, okay, the conflict I experienced felt destructive. It felt like my mentor was a villain. But with the passage of time and with the benefit of reflection and training, I came to the conclusion, first of all, that my mentor was not a villain and I was not a victim. We both equally suffered. The minute I recognized that we equally suffered, it opened the door for me to realize, through conflict, even through an extreme conflict, learning is always to be had. And that may be a difficult message for some of you who may be sitting in very heated conflict at the moment. And if I were to add on to learning that our relationship with the person who is in the conflict space with us, that relationship, we have the responsibility to still treat that person with respect and dignity. That may be an equal message. So here's what I think about learning. In every conflict situation, it could be something minor as a small pebble in my shoe, or it may feel like a dagger in my jugular. There's always something I'm going to learn newly about myself, about how I'm showing up, how I may be triggered by some hot button words, or I may surprisingly find some gentleness in me that I didn't know I had, because I may be moved by how the other person is showing up. So there's something I'm going to learn about myself. I will also learn something about the other person. And I'm going to learn something new about a different aspect of the issue involving the conflict that I might have not thought of, but that may be illuminated because the other person gets to tell their story. So even if the conversation goes awry, even if I may never see that person again, I will always endeavor to look for learning, because my worth and my attempt at resolving the conflict do not need to be defined by that one episode. And to get this learning engine, so to speak, going is, to me, a form of an investment in another conflict situation that's going to pass my path. So for the future, I peg my hope on the future, and I will sit, even in a difficult conflict space, to look for learning. Now, the relationship piece I already mentioned, our responsibility towards the other person who may be acting out, who may be unreasonable, who may be hostile, but I will try to hold my respect towards them. But in case of escalated hostility, I will always put my relationship to myself first by checking my safety. I had a male faculty who had once entered my room and started yelling. And in the past, I would have vacated the room out of fear. But I quickly checked in, okay, what's my fallback plan here? I do know I have colleagues outside, so they can immediately come and assist. And by then, I was curious about what was going on behind his screaming. And I asked him to sit down. I said, I'm highly likely to understand you better if you lower your voice and let me know what's going on. And as he was talking, what I tried to do was to make contact with anything that may be fragile, vulnerable, and tender, behind that unlovable, unfriendly, hostile facade. And what I discerned from his remark was he was upset I did not include, I didn't include him on the team when I reconstituted the team. And when I called it out, is this why you're angry? And he said yes. And we had a completely different quality of conversation. I was only able to do that because I felt the security in two things, my physical safety and my ability to give dialogue a try. But I want to highlight our relationship with ourselves is first. So I'm going to quickly go through the 5 pillars of conflict management, but I just want to screen. So thank you for the question. I will get to it because there is some similar questions about this that the community has submitted. And then the chat is, yes, Elizabeth, yes, thank you. You're like my co-facilitators. I really thank you for being there. Yeah, again, when we study the conflict narratives, shortage in the form of staff and facility and technologies were another prominent conflict source. So thank you. Let's start with open up space as the first pillar of managing conflict. When I am under stress, this is how I typically show up. I pick up the largest, thickest brush and I drench it in a bucket of ink, and then I fill the whole canvas. So for example, I live in Seattle and we just have ongoing relentless mailbox break-ins. So my neighbors, 4 other neighbors, we decided to replace the mailboxes. So I ended up doing some research and I sent them an email. Nobody responds. So my big brushstroke is, no one cares. Everything is on me to take care of. You know what? I'm just going to go solo and I'm just going to change out mine. You guys do your own. Well, I sent the email again this morning and nobody responds, but I ran into a neighbor who said, oh, I'm sorry, I haven't seen the email. So this is what I know of myself, that I tend to fill the entire canvas with my truth, with my belief, and then I tend to act out. I will go solo. If you're not with me, I am just going to ram this initiative my way. So this is why I actually have to continue to teach as a way to hold myself accountable so that I can begin to show in this, it's a Japanese pine tree painting. So I put down my thick brush, I pick up the thinnest brush, and I put down my brush stroke of my story, my observation, my perception in a tentative way and in an invitational way. So I could say to the neighbors, this is the second emails I have sent. And when I hear from nobody, the story I'm creating is, maybe this is not a priority for you. When would it be the right time for us to regroup on this issue? And then I have to wait for the other neighbors to tell me whatever is going on in their lives. It's give and take, with the priority being on opening up the space for not just bidirectional words to abide, but also for our bodies to relax a little bit. It's telling my story, holding the other person's story, endeavoring to see common features between our stories as a way to pave a way for the mutual common story that we can pursue together. And I'm not saying that the goal is not that we are always showing up in the pine tree canvas. Physicians tell me, so I'm not a physician, I'm not a clinician, but this is your world. In patient care settings, you may have to show up in the left canvas. You will have to make decisive actions for the sake of the patients. But I think what your team members tell me as what they appreciate is, if you had to make a solo decision, if you have to yell, if you have to tell somebody you are wrong, we're doing it my way, they remember that and they will tell me as their conflict stories. However, what they will also remember if there is a debrief. So if you were to return back to that person and say, hey, I know things were a little bit tense. Can we talk about it? Your team members will also remember that. And in fact, they will tell me there's a bigger remembrance in that return conversation / debrief. Without that, your team will always characterize you as the big brush person whose edicts and orders and commands we have to succumb ourselves to. But I think the goal here is to be in both canvases for the right reasons, but also be aware of what's going on within us. So when I'm in the left canvas, I am not in a space of possibilities, maybe for the right reasons, but maybe for the wrong reason, depending on what's going on with me. But it is definitely a space of limited options versus possibilities. In the left space, I may have to use my authority because the institution has conferred upon me certain level of power to exercise to advance the mission. However, I have to remember that there is always ample opportunity to partner with my team. My team members, they love it if I pause and say, this is what I think. How about you? And the minute I can do it, I am so aware I'm in the pine tree canvas. There are times when I really believe I am right. Then my ego is going to be in the driver's seat. And there are times people I trust will call me out on it. And whenever I get called out, it's a moment of humility and also a moment of humor. I actually get to laugh at myself. Wow, Sarah, you cared so much about that you showed up in this way. But that did not help you accomplish your goal. In fact, it just created tension all around. Let's start all over again. And then there are usually reasons why my ego is in the driver's seat, why I rang the power bell, and why I only see one solution. There are always some reasons, many of which tie back to my upbringing. Just quickly. Oh, well, Dr. Acosta, you say, does a left space get even more cluttered if physician or anyone is depressed and there's alcohol? I think that's such an important point, because to be in the, I can tell you, to be in the right side, it does take tremendous, I think, self-awareness and wellness. When I'm in the right canvas, I breathe more intentionally. I actually intentionally do deep breathing. I observe my staff members. Many of our meetings are on Zoom. I try to really focus on their facial expressions. If I'm unsure, I invite their voices. If I am unwell and I'm under siege for whatever reasons, I think it'll be hard to be in the right space. And if I'm not in the right space, do we always go back to the left space, or maybe there are other kinds of spaces? Self-awareness and social awareness, absolutely. And Jan, thank you for putting in the book name. Yes, that's it. That's the book. And they have series of books like Crucial Confrontations and something around accountability, etc. Here is another take-home point. Many of you, or some of you, ask lots of questions around, is there gender difference in conflict? Is there cultural difference? What do I do, in this sort of very escalated and elevated political correctness environment in our society? How do I make sure I always say the right thing? This is what I'll offer to you as an answer. There is no answer that I have found in my 10 years of journey in this space, but this is what I offer to you, and this is why it's exciting. I believe the way we show up in conflict is in this space of wrestling between the two canvases. Every single day, I am traversing between the two and sometimes in the middle, in that space of tension. And it is out of that tension, what I choose to say, how I choose to act, what I choose to intend to do, they are newly shaped. And so when I put my attention to it, what I'm actually shaping every day anew is my way of being in a certain conflict situation in a unique way that only Sara Kim can show up in. It has now become a journey of seeking and walking on my signature conflict handling path. Sometimes I veer into the left, sometimes I abide in the right, sometimes I may be tightly wedged in between. But I believe so long as I am aware of my intentions, which we will talk about in a moment, my words will be shaped accordingly. My actions will reflect that struggle I have. Because often I will tell colleagues, hey, Patrick, I am really struggling. The story that keeps coming up for me is that I am being excluded from this project for reasons unknown to me. You can imagine how hard it is when that story will not fade away. I would love to hear from you what led to forming the team who will be taking a visible leadership role on the project. So that's what I do. I never bury my true, authentic voice, but I can push it out in this middle space and let the other person pay attention to that struggle. So it is externalizing what's deeply internal, but very dynamic and vibrant. But this is where I'm finding my voice and my style. And I think it's just going to be a lifelong journey. And so I am just going to say one thing because I'm mindful of the time. Because I do get energized by your chats. What about the people who don't go through this training? What about the people who are not as thoughtful as you are, as evidenced by the chat you're putting in? So then they're showing up with the big brush all the time. And we as recipients feel like, wow, every time I'm with you, it just feels like this intense light coming into me. Now, what I'm learning in a humble way, I have given up reforming other people's behaviors. Only control I have is when I am the recipient of those high intense, abrupt, sometimes abrasive remarks, I take it as an opportunity to practice and open up space and create possibilities. So for example, these are my all-time favorite remarks I have heard from people, like, it's all about you, isn't it? What's the point? Nothing changes around here. On the plane, I asked the passenger next to me, may I borrow your phone charger? And she said, no. And I almost said, what's the big deal to her? And what I did was in the moment is, I received her no. She said it emphatically and so loud. Even now, I believe passengers sitting between the rows 18 and 23 heard her. I was really embarrassed. I even thought about, because I was an aisle seat passenger, I even thought about not letting her pass by me when she has to use a bathroom. Because eventually on this long flight, she's going to say, would you mind getting up? I have to use the bathroom. And I'm just going to say no. And that's how I show up in the left canvas. I did manage to ask, is there security concern? When strangers shared the charger, as I'm saying it, I knew it was a dumb remark, but at the same time, it was the only way for me to project some kind of a prism because I'm asking her a question. So when I asked her the question about security, to my shock and delight, she said, no, I'm just odd. So why was I shocked? I was shocked that a person will proclaim that much truth to a stranger on the plane. But I was so delighted because I thought, I'm going to use you in my book. This is a fantastic illustration I'm going to use. But if we had more time and if we were together on Zoom with everybody together, we would do more exercises. How do we take these big brush stroke and take it and project possibilities? But all I'm going to say is what happens in that space, receiving and projecting, that endeavor, if you're ready, wrestling in order to create possibilities, in order to still signal inclusivity, in order to let people know you are curious, then bravo to you. That's all we want, because then we can build something up. Okay, quickly. Second pillar is leading with intention. Based on everything I've said, it's probably not a surprise for you to hear the intention that I float like this little paper boat. It remarkably shapes our words as illustrated on the screen. And so when I actually hurt somebody through my words and actions, and if I were to do root cause analysis, often it's because I didn't think about what I was going to say. So this is why I have to take time to clarify my intention, especially when I'm on a high stake issue in a high paced, stressful environment, more so to pause, which is counterintuitive. I do want to say this though, because some of your questions suggest this. And, in this era where it seems like whatever we say carries a risk of harming others. So how often have we said, oh, I didn't mean to hurt you. This was supposed to be like these fun bubbles, and boy, didn't know it was going to be a deluge onto you. So this is what I'm learning in this space. To say to a person who was already harmed by my words and my actions, oh, I didn't mean it. To me, it's a second harm. What I'm trying to practice is I rush to that person's side and be with the hurt. One thing I do is to apologize if I can do what G.K. Chesterton is telling me to do. He says a stiff apology is a second insult. Isn't that just beautiful? Person is already hurting. And on top of that, I say, I didn't mean it that way. I think you're taking this a little bit too hard. That's a stiff apology. The quote continues, the injured party doesn't want to be compensated because he was wronged. He wants to be healed because he was hurt. And, you can just replace all the gender pronouns. The core message stands. So in this intention impact space where there had been a negative consequence of my words and actions, I try to apologize, but only if my intention to apologize and the words shaped by that intention can ripple out onto the shore of the other person's woundedness. If I can't, probably the best thing is I am so sorry for the harm I have created. I am hoping we can have a longer conversation. That's what I will do. I will not talk as much, but I will do everything I can, if I cannot apologize, to signal to that person, I am shoulder to shoulder with you where you're hurting. I don't have to pry the why. I don't have to pry the perhaps. So that's just a very short remark to what is probably a very complex issue. Test the hypothesis is the third pillar. So this is something I'm trying very intentionally these days. So whenever I find myself picking up the big brush, that means the only hypothesis I'm testing is that I am right and always right. So when we test a hypothesis, what do? We gather information, we collect data, we can also ask questions. So here's a quick illustration. Just checking the questions. Okay. I appreciate all the active remarks in the questions, so thank you. Yes, it'll be Jessica, it'll be recorded. Yes, Jan, hand-tied emotional intelligence comes and you speak as if you've seen my slides. It's emotional intelligence and then my hallmark signature way of being in the conflict. It's presence as well. So I meant to give an illustration, very quick one. During COVID in Seattle, many Asian women were physically assaulted. They were chased down. One woman was hit with a baseball bat downtown Seattle. And these were all classified by Seattle police as hate crime. For the first time in my life, so I'm a citizen, I was born here, although I grew up in Korea. For the first time, I feared for my safety going out in my neighborhood, which is a decent neighborhood. But I had to go grocery shopping. So I go to the local store, I'm in line. I observe that the cashier and the people, the shoppers in front of me, who all happened to be white, that they were chatting in a very friendly banter. I stepped up to the cashier. She does not even look up and say hello. And because of the state of mind I was in, which was fear that by virtue of being an Asian, that I will be exposed to harm, I interpreted her unfriendly disengagement as a form of racism. So I thought, I have a racist in front of me, and I was getting mad. So when she hands me the grocery bag, I was going to snatch without saying a word and say, I will never shop here again. But I thought, boy, this is a good place for me to practice testing the hypothesis. I will find out whether this person is a racist or not. So when I'm giving myself a little bit of mellowness, okay, I'm going to test. What came into view, which I didn't see before, was her name tag, Nancy. So I said, Nancy, how's your day going? And remarkably, this presumed racist is talking to me. She says, I am so tired. I can't wait till I go home. When does your shift end? In 30 minutes. Immediately I thought, I don't know whether she's a racist or not, but I don't care. She's an exhausted staff. I asked her, because by then I'm getting really excited and I'm having a conversation with her. I said, what are you going to do tonight? She said, whatever fun thing she was doing. As I grabbed my bag, I looked at her. I said, Nancy, enjoy your evening. You deserve it. For the first time, she made eye contact with me. And I will never forget the crinkles around her eyes from smiling, floating above the rim of her mask. And it was a 2 to 3 seconds of being together in that space. And as I'm even telling you now, my whole body just gets activated because I put that moment in the vault of my bodily memory, because it was so astounding that a connection like that could be made when I was suffering. Later, I thought a better hypothesis to test, rather than in a negative way, would have been, is this person who is disengaged relatable to me? I could have tested that, but I was in a state of fear, maybe irrational fear. One practical skills when you ask questions are these, and this will all be in your slide. And whoever wants a longer conversation, you'll see my email at the end. I will give you my time, because this is the work that I do. The only thing I'm going to mention is try to ask questions beginning with what or how rather than why. And it just has a different quality of being in this conversation space. It's a way to project spectrum of possibilities. That's all I will say. And hopefully the answers that are posted are self-explanatory. And this is what Jan was referring to in terms of emotional intelligence. There are times my emotions soar and roar like the squadron of thunderbirds. But I learned from this biplane, which are many of you might have seen it. I've seen it along the California coastline. It's this aerial advertising biplane with the banner. If I were to synthesize everything I know about emotional intelligence, it is this. If I'm in the pilot seat and I am sputtering around with my emotion across the sky, I will never make contact with what is really going on behind my core emotions. So emotional intelligence experts teach us to be the self-witness to these emotions that are manufactured in our body. Feelings apparently are shaped by our cognitive interpretation. Emotions are core to our body. It takes time for us to make contact with it, to peel off in order to see what's behind my anger. If I can allow the pause and the curiosity, my anger actually begins to show the real story. You know, I really want to belong to this group. I just don't have any openings to get in, and it's showing up as anger. Sometimes it's about disappointment and sadness. I wish you were on my side instead of disagreeing with me every step of the way. So what I found is when I make contact with the real, authentic story behind my emotion, that I wish you were on my side can be articulated to another person as a proxy expression of my core emotion. So once I found out, this is what I do. Every time I'm in high emotions, I give it a time. It takes as long as 48 hours. And amazingly, I arrive at the real story, and that story becomes a building block for conversation with my colleague. Here are some measures in terms of articulating our emotion. I'm not going to go through in detail because you'll have the slide. All we have to practice is it's about handling both how we signal to others, we know how they feel, but we also have to signal to others how I feel. It's and. I cannot manage conflict at the expense of not honoring my emotion. If I tilt towards emotions too much in service of the other person, I am going to shortchange my relationship to myself. That's all I will say. Power. Many of you mentioned power. and none of my slides do any justice to the depth of the conversation we can have. Because of time, this is all I'm going to show you. When you're in a space of power, I know your upper management largely functions out of the positional legitimate power. They may have zero awareness that in their team, people bring all sorts of legitimate and rich power sources, including referent power. Everything I do in conflict space with the power up, they are drawn from my referent power, which is commonly understood as charisma. Charisma is not glamour, glitz, and glory. Charisma is the uncommon personal characteristics like audacity, humility, humor, kindness, something that shapes our unique signature conflict presence, our conflict conversational words, and our intention. So again, I apologize for the simplicity of this, but this is what I tell the leaders, that your responsibility is to know when you make a solo decision, when your ears are not leaning to the voices on the ground, what is missing is your ability to tap into personal resources of your team. Likewise, people in lower positional power, it is our responsibility to tap into our referent power. Granted, it is a risky endeavor. I know that. I have taken those risks. But when I show up, at least in my organization, as the stone breaker, which is a Latin word, is saxifrage, when I break through the thick crust of fear of speaking up, expressing my opinion, offering alternatives, posing questions, disagreeing, my lead-in sentence to the leaders have mattered. It could be deferential, I could be wrong, or I am curious, or it's important that I clearly understand your intent. Could you help me? So there's a core message I have to deliver, but for that core message to be heard and considered, I am learning how to open my conversation. It is a bit of a gentle hook. Hey, I'm about to deliver something important I need you to attend to, but I have to do it in a way that's going to pivot their attention and care towards me. And that takes a lot of work on my part. Sometimes I do remain silent because the risk seems too big. And that's our humanity. And that's the decision you have to make. The last two slides. The last pillar, as you all know, as Jan said, it's about emotional intelligence. It's about everything. But I love this quote by Nietzsche. It was a surprise to hear this from him. We often refuse to accept an idea merely because the tone of voice in which it has been expressed is unsympathetic to us. And I like the merit of this quote because it accentuates the point I'm making. It's not just about the words. It's the emotions we infuse. It's the care that we cue to the other person with everything we've got. Because this conflict, no matter how hard, is happening with another individual. And I'll end on this because Austin needs 20 seconds to do some wrap up. This is Shigeo Fukuda's work. He's a shadow artist. You may not readily see what this is about. It's 847 metal spoons, forks, and knives glued together. This is how conflict sometimes feels to me. It's this massive, menacing stuff that if I go nearby, I may get harmed. But what is incubated in this massive stuff, when Shigeo Fukuda sends in the light sources from the right angle and with the light intensity and the combination of everything, what is incubated in this massive stuff is this gorgeous motorbike. And that's my last point about conflict management. No matter how ugly and tiresome a conflict may appear to be, we never know what's incubated in us, in it, until we begin to shed light through it with our skills to take the intense light beam and project out into possibilities, until we can reflect other people's emotions, our emotions, until we can take on a curious stance by collecting data to test hypotheses and lead in with questions beginning with what and how. In the slides, you'll see the community questions, which I try to embed in my talk. I want to highlight the top one. What is the secret to getting to agreeing to disagree? I just call that out as ultimate wisdom. Krista Tippett, who is a broadcaster who has a beautiful podcast called On Being, has this quote: I can't agree with your opinion, but I can disagree. I'm so sorry. I cannot agree with your opinion, but I am getting this mixed up. I can't agree with your opinion, but I cannot disagree with your experience. That's it. So yes, we can have vigorous disagreement over an issue. But when it comes to people's firsthand experiences with that difficult experience, matter, their experience is authentic, therefore deserves to be heard and honored. And on that note, I apologize for racing through. I hope, Austin, if you're there.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Kim.
I'm so sorry that I had to race through, but is there a way for us to save the chat and Q&A so we can share back with the community?
Yeah, I can share that.
Okay, fabulous. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Austin.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Kim, for this great presentation, and to all who joined us. As a reminder, a recording of this webinar and slides will be made available on our AOGME webpage shortly. If you have any questions, please contact us directly at aogme@acon.org. This concludes our webinar. Thanks again to everyone who joined us, and have a great evening.